Assalamu alaikum, I'm Carl Arrindell and you're watching In Focus. Now I'm pleased to be joined this afternoon by the Right Honourable Nick Clegg, Deputy Prime Minister, who's leading a team of senior ministers, including the Faith and Communities Minister Baroness Varsi and Communities and Local Government Minister Don Foster, on a mission to meet face-to-face and to listen directly to the concerns of minority communities nationwide. The next phase of this will involve them travelling to Manchester sometime this week to engage with the Muslim communities in those cities. Deputy Prime Minister, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Islam Channel.
Very good to see you.
Now, the issue of building trust between government and communities, in particular the Muslim community, was the main focus of an interview that I conducted in the early days of the administration of the coalition in May 2010 with the then Secretary of State for Security, Baroness Neville-Jones. She spoke of a previous government which seemed to only be looking at the Muslim community through the prism of extremism and terrorism, a process which research has shown serves to reinforce the perception of Muslims as a suspect community. She made specific reference to the shake-up of the Prevent agenda. Such sentiment seems to be at odds with the government's subsequent perceived disconnect from key Muslim umbrella organisations such as the Muslim Council of Britain and FOTIS, for which I know you've commented that they weren't doing enough to tackle extremism. Is there a policy of disengagement? Is this new initiative a part of a process of change?
Well, this initiative is about one simple thing, which is what can we do together across communities, across the country, to stamp out crimes of prejudice, of hatred, of violence, which is bred by prejudice and interracial and interreligious tension. That kind of crime has absolutely no place in 21st century Britain. You know, one of the great things about our country is that we are diverse, that we're tolerant, that we respect each other's views and creeds. And I think that whether it is violence against Muslims, just as much as I abhor violence against members of the Jewish community and other communities, it must be stopped wherever it can. And that's why I have set up a cross-government working group on anti-Muslim hatred, bringing together officials from across government and outside academics to look at this issue, and also why we are giving considerable amounts of funding to Faith Matters, an excellent organisation run by Fiaz Mughal, which will be recording very, very precisely, in a very rigorous, comprehensive way, in a more rigorous way than I hope has been the case under previous initiatives, recording the level of crime, of violence, of incidents that are bred by anti-Muslim hatred, so that we get a picture of the dimensions of this. And I think this is a very important step forward. It's why I'm in Manchester this week with Saida Wazi and Don Foster, visiting a Muslim cultural centre, visiting a Muslim community centre which had been vandalised, and listening to the views of members of the Muslim community. In other words, taking this all out of the kind of prism, or away from the prism of security, and just looking at the needs, the legitimate needs of peace-loving Muslims in their own right.
Well, the Faith Matters initiative, which you refer to, I think it's called Tell Mama, is clearly got to be welcomed as another mechanism to properly record the levels of Islamophobic, anti-Muslim hate crime that takes place in this country. But there are some issues that have been raised as concerns in the Muslim community. I know that the Association of Chief Police Officers, ACPO, identified a number of anti-Semitic hate crimes as a subtotal within their faith and religion category. So they're making specific allowances for recording anti-Semitic hate crime, whereas it seems that there is no specific allocation or recording of Muslim hate crime. Is that something that you're going to
Look, hate crime is hate crime, full stop. And we should be treating all hate crime with the same intolerance. And I believe that very, very strongly. That's why the fact that there has been a longer history of recording hate crime and prejudicial incidents of violence and otherwise in the Jewish community, the fact that's been going on for longer, is something actually I think we should learn from when trying to do similar parallel work in the Muslim community. That's why I'm delighted that the Community Security Trust, which is a community-based security organisation, as its name implies, within the Jewish community, is actually giving advice to faith matters and to other Muslim communities in order that one community can learn from the other. I couldn't agree more with your assumption, which is we shouldn't be treating one hate crime differently to another. It's the other reason why I will be meeting representatives of the Muslim community, the Jewish community, and indeed representatives of the Christian community in Manchester this very week to talk about precisely those things.
I accept totally that there ought to be different standards for different communities. But I think there was another component to my question, which was about the need to understand better the nature of that crime. And I suppose what has become, based on experience with the Jewish community, is a recognition that there needs to be clear identification. And I'm just asking whether that might be something that you may push for.
Absolutely. But in a sense, judge us by our actions, not our words. The fact that we've already announced, I think it's £118,000 worth of assistance to this initiative, which is going to gather the data, the information, the raw, hard information about where these incidents are taking place, that we are confirming further money, over £200,000 for a further year's research, that I've established this cross-government anti-Muslim hatred working groups to understand the dimensions of the problem, and that working group can provide recommendations to me about what the government should do more in order to combat this level of prejudice and hatred, which is really, has a terrible effect on the lives of those Muslims who are the victims of those kind of crimes.
Now, recent years have seen a growth in far-right hostility and violence targeting British Muslims and Islamic institutions. So I know it's not just in Britain, it's been right across Europe. Testimonies and studies have been delivered to the Leveson inquiry, and which has highlighted the degree of Islamophobia that exists within particular our national press. It's hoped that Lord Justice Leveson will recommend the formation of an independent regulatory body which will have the power to properly take action against those who don't only just target individuals but also communities. Do you agree with the need for a far more robust regulatory body, and will your government be giving its full support to such a measure if it's proposed?
I think there is an issue about how Islam and indeed the role of Muslim communities in Britain is portrayed in parts of the press. It's one of the things that the working group that I've established within government, the cross-government working group, is looking at in its early work. I can't, of course, prejudge what Lord Justice Leveson will come up with in terms of his wider remit to look at, how the media is held accountable when things go wrong. My own view is, assuming that his proposals are workable and proportionate, we should of course seek to support them and implement them.
Deputy Prime Minister, Right Honourable Nick Clegg, thank you so much for joining us on Islam Channel.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
I think if you go back 2 years, I think the acknowledgement that there was a real issue in relation to anti-Muslim hatred and Islamophobia wasn't there. You may recall that I did a speech back in 2011, the Sternberg lecture, in which I said that Islamophobia had passed the dinner table test. I felt it was really important to draw a line in the sand and basically say that this is an issue. And what I'm delighted about is the fact that the government responded after that speech. We set up a cross-government working group on anti-Muslim hatred. We have started to fund projects, including the Mama project, which is recording. Look, statistics are the first step towards resolving the problem. We have to find out the extent of the problem. We have to give the community confidence in being able to report the problems, and then government has to respond appropriately to resolve the problem.
For all of my life, have been passionate about praising the contribution that people from a wide range of backgrounds make to the life of this country. My job as the Communities Minister is to continue not only to celebrate that, but to provide the resources, the help and the support to enable further projects to go on and do that. That's what I'm about. Others must defend what they say. I actually welcome the huge contribution that is made by Muslims, by Christians, by Sikhs, by Hindus in this community. I want to further that work and to have much better integration. That's what I'm going to do.
I believe that laws can't fix everything. Actually, the way that parents talk to children in the kitchen, the way in which teachers talk to pupils in the classroom, the conversations that take place in the mosque, in churches, in playgrounds, in parks, the web of a million, billions of conversations, the way in which adjectives and adverbs are deployed to describe Islam. In other words, the web that makes up our culture of assumptions about the way in which we seek to understand each other and the way in which we seek to describe each other, has a bigger influence in the long run than what is on a statute. Important though that is. I'm not trying to discount it. And that's why actually I think events like this are hugely important. And that's why I think one of the most important things that politicians can do when they're in a position of power is, yes, they can reach for the statute book, but one of the most important things that we can do is speak out about Islamophobia, as Saida courageously did some time ago, and as she described earlier, to condemn acts of anti-Muslim hatred and violence, to talk to those who are affected by it, as Don and I were doing this morning, to hold public events like this in front of the cameras, to make sure that people who are sitting in their living rooms watching this know this is an issue which is taken very seriously indeed by the authorities of the land. And we need to do that week in, week out, month in, month out. And that is why the work of this anti-Muslim hatred working group that we've established across government isn't just a sort of one-off initiative. That's why we're providing substantial amounts of money to organisations such as Fiaz's Faith Matters. So they provide us with the information, so on an ongoing basis we can speak out. On an ongoing basis we can hold events like this. On an ongoing basis, when we condemn wrongdoing, we can do so on the basis of facts, not just an opinion. When we have a discussion about the way in which things are portrayed in the media, we don't just do so by slinging allegations around, but we do it in a united way, in which the government is taking a lead, but in which it is supported by the opinions of you in the communities as well. I only stress that because I sometimes think people think there's a switch you could flick and suddenly Islamophobia goes out. It doesn't. You could pass a law tomorrow on this or that or the other until it penetrates people's hearts, until it actually affects the way people view the world, until it actually changes the lenses which people have through which they see the world. Nothing will really change. And that's why I think, yes, there are these instant solutions people seek, fair enough. And sure, the things that government should do, which we are doing, and no doubt there are more things we could do. But the most important thing of all is to bring this out of the shadows, call it what it is, talk about it, condemn it when it needs to be condemned, and show compassion and tolerance where that is required as well.